Hello there and welcome to Oldham Chronicle Online. This is Simon Smedley and I've got with me two of the Inspiral Carpets. I've got Graham Lambert,
Hello.
guitarist.
Hi,
Graham. And Craig Gill, the drummer.
Hello.
Hi Craig. Okay. The Inspiral Carpets, Manchester royalty at the turn of the 90s. That was with largely with Tom Hingley on lead vocals. At the late 80s and early 90s, the Inspirals produced 13 top 40 singles and 4 chart-topping albums.
That's right.
Is that right?
It is right. Not quite chart-topping, but the 4 albums we did were all got into the top 10, I think, but it was such a long time ago. But we split in 95, but since 2003, so we had an 8-year break, if you like, since 2003, we've been doing touring roughly about every 3 years. So the band has kind of only had a hiatus of 8 years in the early 90s, mid-90s onwards. So it's good to be back though, and it's good to be making new music and re-releasing old music as well. It's good. It feels really positive.
Yeah, good stuff, good stuff. Well, it's like I hinted at there, up until the sort of early 90s, to the mid-90s as you say, people were perhaps wondering whether that was it. But
yeah.
no, in 2011, Tom left the band.
He did.
Steve Holt came back. Since then, there's been a couple of singles.
That's right. Plenty
of gigs. And now, this year, after all these years, the Inspiral Carpets are just releasing Dung 4, reissuing an original demo album featuring 11 tracks. And it's being reissued this month, and there's gigs coming up, festivals coming up, and a whole album of new material. So that's terrific. So firstly, my first question to both of you, we'll start with Craig. Could you just go back to the early days, Craig? You were obviously were you the youngest of the band?
I was the baby of the band, yeah.
You certainly was, yes.
So I joined in 1985.
Okay.
Steve and Graham had been doing the band for around about a couple of years before that. I joined in 85. Bumped into Graham on Red Barn Car Park, where they were attempting to play the annual Summer Fete, and the drummer hadn't turned up, so I quickly ran home, bundled my drum kit into the back of my dad's car, and went back. And they had decided to call the gig off, thankfully for me, but I went to an audition, and 2 songs in, Graham come over and said, right, what are you doing next week? I've got a gig at the Boardwalk. So I thought, great, I'm in. Just thought they let me in now, because I was so young.
So how long have you been playing the drums for then, Craig? Have you been in bands before, even before then?
I've not been in any bands. I've probably been playing drums for about a year maximum before meeting Inspirals. I've not joined any bands. What my dad would do is, my dad's a musician, so he said that you just get bored playing drums on your own, so he used to look at the ads in the back of the papers, what the drummer wanted, and ring them up and say, right, I've got rehearsal room, if someone wants to audition with you, and he'd just throw me at the deep end playing with these bands, mainly all covers bands that wanted me to play like somebody that had been playing for 20 years. So obviously I didn't get the gig, but with that hour, 2 hours I spent in the practice room, I got a lot of experience from that. But when I met Graham and the boys, you know, it was my sort of basic skills that they was looking for, and they were doing all their own material. Bar maybe 1 or 2 covers, but it was all their own material, so I was able to put my own little stamp on that, and it was well suited, I think, what I was doing to what they were probably looking for.
Good. And by this time, Graham, you'd been at it for quite a number of years.
Yeah.
When was it 83? Was it when the initial idea?
Yeah, I think it's as far back as that, but it was very, very basic, style of the band. We didn't have a proper drummer. We had like made up instruments and people banging the mum's pans with soup spoons.
I can remember you practicing in your mum and dad's garage. Was it in Fall Green in Chelsea?
Fall Green, yeah. Various incarnations of the group back in the day, But I think as time went on over the course of 2 or 3 years, I bumped into Steve, who became the singer, pretty similar to the way we bumped into Craig. And it followed the way we bumped into Clint as well. That bit by bit, some people fall by the wayside who are just not into it, and then some people stick with you because, one, you're on the same wavelength, so you become mates, and two, that you've got some kind of like drive inside you that makes you want to make music, which, you know, here we are like 25 whatever years later, you know, it's quite amazing really, you know, to think that we're still making new music and we're still re-releasing old music as well, you know, it's fantastic.
Just still looking back at the old days, or the Manchester era, if you like.
Yeah.
What were your sort of happiest or most clear memories of those days? Because you played some massive gigs. I remember going to see you at the GMEX, and it was absolutely a lot.
Yeah.
You know, and I've already mentioned about the top 40 singles, Top of the Pops, and all the rest of it. You know, what are you sort of? Let's ask Craig. What about your?
I think when you're talking about
those days,
pinnacles, you know.
Yeah, pinnacles.
GMEX
That's a good word.
Kinda sums it all up. I mean, it's amazing the amount of people that. I mean, I do the music tours now, and I meet so many people. So that was my first ever concert I ever went to. You know, and sort of blown away by it. And there were more than just concerts. They were like sort of happenings or gatherings or even raves. So I think that as our own gig, obviously headlining the Reading Festival is probably the biggest crowd we played to. Doing Top of the Pops for the first time, probably another big moment when you think, this is it, we've cracked it. Travelling the world, going to Argentina and playing the River Plate Stadium, going to Japan as well. So there's so many really to just pinpoint, one aspect of it. But at the same time as well, the bigger you sort of get, the more kind of pressures there are and the more business things there are to take care of as well. So sometimes it's going to be the happy memories are always like tainted with some sort of business memory as well that kind of taints it really a little bit. But we've not got that now. We're not playing we're not playing GMEX to 11,000 people, but we haven't got that sort of pressure. No pressure on us from record companies to have it records and everything. So it's changed. So it's still like we don't just sit there with our rose tinted shades. I'm talking about the old days. It's still sort of invigorating to be doing these gigs now and making the new music as well.
I can see you're quite keen to talk about the now and the future, but again, just as the person that was there right from the beginning with your pots and pans, Graham, what about your memories of the late 80s, early 90s?
I think I agree
halcyon days, should we say.
All the things Craig said about GMEX, Top of the Pops and that, they're all fantastic landmarks, and they're all instantly recognisable probably by most of the bands, because that's what you strive for. But for me personally, my golden moment was in July '88 when John Peel started his show with our first single, Keep the Circle Around. And for me, that was probably from going back the previous 5 years, from being with the other band members, meeting Steve, meeting Craig, meeting Clint. From all that, the previous 5 years, the golden moment was, that's probably all what I was ever striving for. Being in a band was for John Peel to love us and play our music, because I listened to his show religiously whenever he was on. So I was on holiday at the time in Scotland, and he started his show off and Keep the Circle Around, and I went and I got out of bed and ran down the road, and like an old country lane, pitch black, to phone Clint to tell him to let everybody know John Peel was just playing, because they were all rehearsing without me because I was on holiday. Absolute golden moment, and I remember saying to Clint, leaving, when I saw him the next time, I said, we're going to have to move the goalposts now, because that's, one object achieved. Whereas Clint, and Craig was also a big John Peel fan, and so was Clint, but Clint obviously always had broader horizons, or looked further afield than somebody like I do, just because he's naturally like that. But he'd be thinking that, that's just one of the stepping stones of where we're going. Whereas for me, if it ended the following year or whatever, I probably could have lived with that, because call me unambitious or call me realistic, but it was a golden moment, and it really was a turning point, because from there we did John Peel sessions, we got gigs in London, we got an agent, we got gigs abroad, the Stone Roses and Happy Mondays took off at the same time, but John Peel was, out of the three bands, we were the band that John Peel really championed, so it always kept us quite cool, even though we weren't mainstream like the Stone Roses and Happy Mondays became. But we were always had that cool indie working person's kind of ethic about us that John Peel I think liked, and that was the golden moment for me.
What about if we can sort of wind on, move on a little bit as past the halcyon days, if we like, and the Top of the Pops appearances and the world tours, and you kind of, what happened after '95 when I guess the recording deals maybe dried up, and what happened then? Did you all kind of go your separate ways? Just tell us a little bit more about what's happening.
Probably if you asked all 5 members, we'd all have a different view on what actually happened in '95. But the record deal ran out. We shopped around for a new deal and we didn't get one. We were with Mute Records, and I for one thought we'd walk into another deal pretty quickly, but we tried and nothing came forward. No deal anything like what we were on with Mute, to be on basically wages to make records, which is the position we worked ourselves to. So we give it about 6 months and then just decided that was it really. And Craig may have a different angle on it than I had, but
I think that pretty much sums it up really. It was probably we like I said, we could have probably carried on doing the band with a smaller deal. Nothing probably like what the level we were at sort of with Mute. So I think the thing was to not just carry on sort of aimlessly. I think because we'd carried on having hits up until sort of '94, I think.
Yeah.
I Want You. So we're still kind of going out really on a high, and I think people just, we've been together that long, people had ambitions to maybe do some solo stuff or go off and work in other fields or whatever, so it just felt like a natural thing to do really, not just try and sort of flog it and just to try and sit back and assess where we were at with everything. It took us 8 years really to work out where we were at.
Because you'd had bits of reformations, if you like, in '03. I think you said in '08 you did a few gigs and what have you.
Yeah.
But 2011, if we can fast forward to then, Steve. Well, firstly, Tom leaves. You want to just explain as briefly or as whatever as you want. Why Tom Hingley left?
I think he was a bit disillusioned with the band not being full time, but it was disillusioning for us all because we all had other projects on that we were doing, and sometimes when someone's free, somebody else wouldn't be free, and vice versa. So for me, it always had to be, everybody had to be available and up for doing it, and I think it just got the better of Tom, and I think as I see it, just one day he just let himself down a little bit by saying that we'd split up on Twitter when I wasn't on Twitter at the time, but boy, I found out that morning that he decided to put it on Twitter rather than say he was actually out and out leaving himself. But you can't really be in a band with somebody who's going to do something like that, and by the time it got retweeted and people ringing me up and taking the mickey out of me or consoling me, and I'm thinking, what are you talking about? And then Craig sent me a text to let me know that what Tom had done, so I think he let himself down really, and maybe he thought we couldn't carry on without him, but it was him just very eloquently put it, that was Tom stepping out of the situation when really it wasn't quite going his way, so
let's speak a bit more positively then, perhaps, and back comes Steve Holt after all those years. How did that kind of come about? Have you always been in touch with him, Craig?
Not really. I wouldn't say sort of in touch. I've met him a few times out and about, and the thing is, when sort of Steve left the band initially, Steve went off, formed another band, and when I met him, it was, he wasn't bitter at all, and so it was always, it was always nice to see him, and he was great to talk to, and he didn't seem he didn't seem bitter about what had gone on in the past, and so when Tom left, it just seemed like a natural thing to do, really, to see what Steve was up to. Graham had bumped into him a couple of times as well at gigs. We didn't know if he was still singing or whether he'd be up for singing. But like I said, Graham had seen him at gigs, so we knew that he was still sort of into his music and interested, and just seemed the logical thing to do, really, rather than try and get a stranger in to.
Just going back to you, Graham, he's slotted straight back in.
Yeah.
You've had a single in 2012.
Yep.
A single come out. What was the first one called? Sorry.
First one was You're So Good For Me.
And then Fix Your Smile in 2013.
That's right.
You've done plenty of gigs.
Yeah, I've done.
But
I was counting them the other day. It's about 60 gigs since Steve came back, which is we've done more gigs now with Steve coming back since we did from 2003 to 2011. I think where there's a will, there's a way. I think really is the catchphrase that kind of sums us up. Really, that we work around things that were problems before that seemed insurmountable. We seem to work around them now and make things work. And it's been massively enjoyable. And I don't think anybody holds anything against Tom, and we're dead appreciative of our time with him. But that time came to an end. Like Steve the first time round, and nobody was more upset than me when Steve left initially. And my one regret in life now is that, and I think about it almost every day, is that when he phoned me up to say he was leaving, I should have just gone, just have a couple of weeks out and think about it, and what can we do to make it work. This is back in '88, start of '89, because I don't think the success the band went on to have with Tom would have been any less if Steve would have been with us, because Steve is kind of like our mate as well as our fellow band member, and it's been great having him back. I can't say enough good things about him. He's a brilliant human being,
Yeah.
And I only realise now that I missed him,
What was his reaction when you sort of first made contact with him again about getting back into the band?
It's funny because
I think I spoke to him at Home First last year, and he was kind of buzzing about it. And talking about when you first got back in touch in 2011. So was that the case that he couldn't wait to get back in?
It was really cool about it, but it was kind of nerve-wracking for me. I was out on one of my many bike rides, and Clint had said to me, ring Steve and get him back in the group, when we kind of decided that's what we were doing. And
you hadn't fallen out back in the day, have you?
No. He stayed just kind of, the gigs and working at the same time, and we all had jobs, didn't we? Were you looking at that car place at that point? Were you still at school?
Yes, yeah.
But, it was quite hard juggling, doing 3/4 of a day's work, then jumping in a van and going to London, doing a gig, getting back at 4 o'clock in the morning, and then getting up at 6 and doing your day's job, and then probably going rehearsing that night. It's quite hard, quite challenging, and I think Steve was over in Bradford at the time, so it was getting too much for Steve.
That leap of faith as well, where you've got to leave your job to go and do the band, but you're not earning a wage from the band, but you've used all your holidays up. You've got to do the band full time, or not do it at all. But then you've got to kind of come out, and luckily if you're living at home, you might just be able to make it work. And I think Steve had just decided that he was going to sort of settle down and get a house, so he couldn't have it sort of both ways. So it was amicable, really. He
was the only band member that didn't live with his parents. How on rock and roll that is, that comes across as, I don't know, but it's true. And it's the other way you could survive and be in a band and afford to jack your job in. There's probably so many bands been in that position over the years, and probably 99 out of every 100 don't make any money out of it and have to go back to trying to get the job back with the tail between their legs. But to go back to when Steve came back in, I think we'd had a meeting or a chat with us four after Tom had left, and Clint said to me, just ring Steve and get him back in. And then I said yeah, but I was thinking in my mind, how can you be so positive that Steve will come back, So anyway, so I was out on the bike, and I texted him saying, do you fancy come doing some singing? And he thought it meant for my solo project, but I said no, with us, Tom's like throwing the towel in kind of thing. And he said, yeah, he came back, we rehearsed the following week. Well, he came here actually, he came to my house initially, we did a few songs acoustically. Then we went to where we practiced, and we did, just practice. We wrote You're So Good For Me, which came out as a single a few months later, and we toured on the back of it, and yeah, it's been great.
I know it's probably a cliche, but did it feel like you'd never been away?
Bizarrely, it does. But he's such a nice bloke, and I guess we all get on, or else it wouldn't have worked. But he's had 20 years out of the music industry, where we've had 20 years of dipping in and out of the music industry, and the pitfalls of having a record deal, losing a record deal, reforming, doing the greatest hits. You know, Steve hasn't experienced that. He's obviously experiencing it now. So he wasn't tarnished with some of the things we were tarnished with. So as well as us sort of telling him, oh, this happened, and then when that happens, this happens and stuff, Steve kind of just takes it all with a pinch of salt and just goes with it, you know. But it's been good, and it's been refreshing.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the testament to that is the fact that as soon as he picked up the old stuff really well. And it's obviously hard when you step in someone else's shoes, singing some of the songs, trying to sound like someone else. But he did it, you know, perfectly well. But as soon as we started trying new material, then it just sort of gelled. It just works. Like we just worked on a new song, and then I think that sort of first rehearsal when we tried it, we're like, right, we need to get in the studio and record this now. It just, like I said, it just seemed natural, and it just all seemed to, the chemistry just seemed to be there again. Yeah. And yeah, like Graham says, I mean, like Steve's last gig before he left was at a cricket club down south to about 20 people, and his first gig back was in Argentina, Buenos Aires, a free open air concert for 7,000 people supporting Interpol, and I think I was more nervous than him, I think.
Yeah.
So let's look to pretty much up to the present, I think now. So we've got Dung 4. Tell us a little bit about Dung 4. It's an old, very very old.
11 song demo that we did in the end of '87. Songs that we've been touring for. Some of them were 2 years old at that point, and we've been playing in pubs and clubs of Oldham and Manchester, and we did some gigs over in Sheffield quite often to support the Bodines down in London around that time as well. And some of those songs on Dung 4 made it onto Live, the first album, different versions, but this is Dung 4, 11 songs with Steve singing from 1987. Just great memories, you know. We sold a lot of copies of that on cassette back in the day, but we signed to Cherry Red Records earlier this year, and they said, before we do the new album with all the new material on, let's re-release it as a taster, just to remind people that you've been going for so long and you've got some, you know, a strong back catalogue. Some of these songs were your first single, Keep the Circle Around, on Dung 4, and a lot of songs made it from Dung 4 onto the first album. Let's put that out because it's got Steve singing on it, and it was before Live. And then later in the year we'll put the new album out. So the year is kind of going to be bookended by 2 albums from us, you know. So I was sold on it right away. I thought it was a great idea. It's quite exciting.
It was obviously it was Record Store Day last week, was it?
Yeah, April the 20th.
Did you manage to sell a few?
Oh yeah.
Vinyl copies?
It came out on vinyl.
Yeah.
I'll go and get you one too. I can't give it you, but I can show you. Have you seen it?
No.
Right, I'll go and get it in a minute.
Yeah.
Beautiful package, absolutely stunning, isn't it, Craig?
It's great. Yeah. We've all pulled our old flyers and ticket stubs and pictures and everything, so you get like it's like a poster, pulls out, double-sided thing, and it's like, when I got it, I mean, we got it on CD at first, but obviously it's like a big collage, so some of the pictures are quite small, but it doesn't quite work as well on CD. But when you got the vinyl, pulled out the poster, I must have sat there maybe for about an hour looking at all these pictures and noticing things I'd not noticed before.
I've
seen him. Yeah.
This is the
great stuff. So Graham's just showing me.
It doesn't really work on regularly.
No. But, yeah.
Gigging Oldham there at the Tokyo Club.
Wow.
The,
So we've obviously got your Dung 4 reissued. Happy with it? Happy?
Absolutely, yeah. Stunning piece of packaging, and also with a free 7-inch, if you call it free, of the demo before this. So this is
there's 4 tracks on that.
4 on there, yeah.
Yeah.
And this all done, the artwork's done the same as it was when it came out on cassette back in the day.
Wow, almost 30 years.
Graham used to do it in Upper Mill.
Yeah.
The printers there in his dinner hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now the future. The future. You are recording fresh material. Oh yeah.
Yep.
Fresh material. And is it in the autumn a new album?
Yeah, released in. I'm not sure the release date. I think it's late September. We'll obviously keep you posted.
Yeah.
And we'll make sure the Chrome's got a couple of copies to give away for the competition as well.
Thank you.
And then we're doing a few festivals over the summer, both abroad and over here. We're doing the Isle of Wight and Tea in the Park. And then there'll be a tour in December. So we'll be doing some a Manchester gig or gigs.
How does it feel to be recording and playing again? Well, let's just say releasing an album of new material again after all these years. It must feel quite strange. Is it?
Like an achievement. It certainly feels like an achievement.
Yeah.
Just getting back in the studio. I mean, getting back together was great, but we've pretty much been playing sort of greatest hit sets since then. So actually, that bit of the writing process and recording as well, that's the bit that's really been missing. That's felt the whole thing kind of feel complete. And so doing that now and listening to it back in the studio was great. I just can't wait to get the finished article there in front of me again in on vinyl.
You've got quite a few gigs booked up and down the country. You've even got one or two booked in Spain and Italy, I gather.
Yep.
Now, I don't know where Frome is. Where's Frome?
Frome, I think so. It's near Glastonbury, Bristol way, southwest. Yeah.
Southwest.
Yes.
That's one on the gig list. And the Buckley Tivoli.
Where's that? Wrexham way, over there. Wrexham, yeah. But they kind of act as warm-ups for the bigger festivals like
Tea in the Park.
One of them's on the way to Tea in the Park, not geographically on the way, but what's the word? Date-wise, it's on the way to Tea in the Park. And then a couple of gigs on the way to the Isle of Wight. So we do warm-ups basically, so we rehearse the songs that we're going to do, but then you go out and do them in a gig, in a little club gig, just to make sure you're all match fit. It's like doing pre-season friendlies before a big game, before the season.
How can I ask you? Does it feel different this time? Well, obviously it does because you're so many years older, but do you still get the same kind of buzz inside and getting on stage and
very much so.
Seeing the same faces in front of you?
If anything now, it's more spontaneous now because we changed the set around a little bit. We've got more material to pick from. We're not necessarily selling just one album when we go on tour. So in the past when we've gone on tour, we've been doing 8 or 10 songs from the new album. Now we chop and change it, and we'll do some songs from the new album, some songs from this album, presumably, obviously the hits as well. So it's a bit more spontaneous, but you still, if ever you don't get the buzz of feeling you're going to go on stage and do a gig, if you don't get that buzz, then you're best off not doing it. Really, you've got to love it, and but at the end of the day, you're kind of performing. Even Nick Cave, Radiohead, Neil Young, Bob Dylan, when they go on stage, they're performing, even if they might look like they're not enjoying it. They are performing because it's what they do.
The buzz is clearly back as well for you, Craig, again.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, we don't sort of like those people Graham mentioned. We're not doing it night in, night out. So for us, it's probably even more special. That we're only doing so many gigs per year. I mean, last time we played at the Ritz when we come out, it was Good Friday. Mad Friday, some people call it, and we come out and it's just amazing, just deafening coming out to that. Just hairs on the back of your neck stood up and stuff, and it gets you fired up like nothing else. Yeah,
good. We'll just sort of begin to wind up now, and I wanted to ask the pair of you. It's quite a decent little music scene going on in Oldham, I think, at the moment. There's 2 or 3 excellent young bands out there. I can name them. There's 5 Foot Fez, Porter's Forces, and Wilson. all bands that are sort of doing the Oldham and the Manchester rounds at the moment. What advice now? Obviously, you'll have to have been there, done it, bought the T-shirt, 20, 30 years, nearly 30 years experience. What advice would you give to a young band trying to get onto, trying to get a record deal this day and age? Because obviously, it's totally and utterly different from back in the day. Completely different, yeah. I personally wouldn't know where to start. Probably the bit of advice I've given is not to ask anybody who's, nearly 50 years old, who's been in a band for 25 years, because the industry's changed massively, but I think a lot of the industry is still based down south for the people that, or the money people are really down there, but you've got to make sure you enjoy it. You've got to make sure that you look part of a band and you act like you're in the same band. It's important. I see so many pictures of bands where they just don't look like they're all in the same band, but you've got to somehow make yourself, or naturally, you've got to look like you're in the same band, and obviously you've got to be on the same wavelength, as we've proved with our lineup, that if you're not on the same wavelength, you'll fall by the wayside eventually, Anything, Craig, I think
you've got to have even though the music business has changed so much, I think you've still got to have the same attitude that just don't rely on other people, It was always, bands were always kind of looking for this record deal, like it was some sort of holy grail, and then a lot of bands found that once they got that record deal, that was the beginning of the end really for them. That's when all the kind of pressure started. So I would just say, like we didn't sort of waste too much time really chasing a record deal. Like Graham says, you move the goalposts all the time. You do a gig, and then it's like to make a record and do it yourself. Sell T-shirts, sell whatever. You've got access to your own fans via social media sites and Facebook and whatnot. So you can sell products direct to them. Just do it yourself. Just don't rely on anybody.
Excellent. We did have a couple of questions coming on the Twitter feed. Yes, that's the official description. We've covered a couple of them, but Gaz Dean asks about the prospects of a hometown gig in the future, whether that's the near future or...
Yes, possibly. We get offered gigs all the time. There's a couple of places in Oldham which have sprung up and mentioned the places to play.
He's mentioned the Queen Elizabeth Hall as Gaz, but that's going to be knocked down. So
is it going to be knocked down?
Yeah. So we can forget that one. But Upper Mill Civic Hall or somewhere like that. Yeah. Wharf Mill.
Charles started having
the Wharf Mill.
It's not far for me to walk home from there.
Right. Wharf Mill's in Diggle.
Right.
They don't have gigs on there though.
No. Civic Hall, I think would be Upper Mill Civic Hall would be a good gig. I mean, we played in Home Firth last couple of times, so it kind of clash with that if we did Home Firth. But I mean we'll bring it up at the next all together.
You obviously got a couple of gigs lined up in Manchester, though, haven't you? To keep local fans.
We can't get off the gig. I mean, somebody did offer us a gig at the Queen Elizabeth Hall, but I don't know why it didn't work out.
And also back in the day, or
we played there back in the day in '92. Played there, Feb '92. Played there. And there was the last night of the Castle. We got offered to play that, but I was away. I couldn't do it, unfortunately. So I'm sure we'll do something. We played at Tokyo twice in 2006. Yeah, that was good. It was 2 cracking nights. I'm sure we'll do something. You can never forget your hometown. But I think it's important to remember that Craig was born in Salford. Martin was born in Denton, or he's from Ashton. So, and Steve's a Chaddertonian. So it's not out and out Oldham, flying the flag for Oldham. I'm clearly Oldham born and bred, but Clint's from Royton, so it's part of Oldham, I accept. But for Martin and Craig born in Salford, it's not always as cut and dried as an on-town gig as you might think. But I'm sure we'll do it at some point in the future.
Good. Well, all the best. Anyway, thank you, Craig Gill and Graham Lambert.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to Oldham Chronicle.
Okay.
Got another break,